welcome back to PEC Talks. We are going to look at a video of Representative Marie Newman testifying about the so-called Equality Act that's in the House right now. I'm sorry, it passed the House, it's in the Senate right now. So we're going to watch this video and we're going to talk about it a little bit.
It really is, it just made me cringe, some of the things that were said in this video. So instead of, playing excerpts, we're just going to kind of watch it and pause it occasionally to talk about the wild assertions that she's making.
Ranking Member Grassley, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and thank you for allowing me to talk today. This issue is very personal to me. And I also would like to say happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. The most important thing in life is to be authentic. I think we all.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if I would be more authentic if perhaps I had, if I had fake breasts put in. Maybe that would make me more authentic.
Right.
Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe that's what she's suggesting, is that we need surgery to be more authentic.
Yeah, and I think maybe to be authentic, I should probably take testosterone and grow a beard and have my breasts cut off, because
definitely
more authentic. So
I would feel more authentic if people thought I was 30 years younger than I am.
I
authentically feel 21. I authentically feel 21.
And I authentically identify as a millionaire. And so I'm thinking people should start sending me some big bucks, because I need to be my authentic self. All right, we're going to continue with this most ridiculous testimony.
Say it again.
As a reminder, we already have freedom of religion in our Constitution, and this act does not discriminate against religion, as we all know. I want to tell you the story of our family.
I was gonna first. There's a couple of things there, Maria.
Yeah, it's not fair.
She says the Equality Act does not discriminate against religion. Oh yeah, it does.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it completely takes away freedom of religion, because you are compelled to believe the transgender ideology. You are compelled to use the forced pronouns, to accept men as women. Yeah, Marie, I'm sorry, it does.
Not to mention
especially.
Go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just going to say, especially, let's say, for Muslim women, for example, the Equality Act really infringes on their actual ability to practice their religion. They will probably no longer be allowed to, no longer be able to go to women-only pools. I can say, especially from Jewish perspective, Jewish women really spend most of their time when they're undressed in sex segregated spaces. Gyms are women only, so it's actually sort of excluding them from these spaces, which has already happened, by the way, in Australia, when they made a women's beach co-ed, and Muslim women said, well, I'm just never going to go.
Right. I mean, I'm thinking of the Mr. Yaniv, who went around harassing women in their homes, and one of whom was a Muslim woman who, it was against her religious beliefs to touch male genitalia, and yet he wanted her to wax his testicles, and he filed a complaint. Something like that would, if it happened in the US, would then be mandated. Not to mention, I'm thinking about nunneries. Like, are nunneries going to have to accept males into them if a male insists that he's a female, or vice versa as far as priests? I mean, there are a lot of ways in which this impinges on religious beliefs, not to mention the fact that, one of my beliefs is that it's important to be honest. Unlike authentic self, honesty is important to me, and it would violate my beliefs to be compelled to call something that they weren't, to be compelled to use pronouns of somebody that weren't accurate. So she blew it on that one. Let's listen to some more.
The act does not discriminate against religion, as we all know. I want to tell you the story of our family, because it is the story of millions of American families across this nation. More than 5 years ago, before my daughter, at just 14 years old, had experienced
14. Did you hear that? Her daughter at 14 years old. So this is a young child, very typical of rapid onset gender dysphoria.
And I was going to say, this is classic textbook ROGD.
Unable
Wait,
to
wait,
identify the
wait,
cause.
wait. So along with the transgender ID, she's got depression and anxiety.
Right. And
Which-
rather than
what
getting
was-
help for that.
Mhm.
Right. Rather than dealing with the depression and anxiety, they're going to deal with the
Mhm.
transgender ID.
Right.
Pain, she told her parents that the only two solutions she felt would solve it was either suicide or running away.
And again,
say that-
we hear this suicide threat again and again and again. If children are threatening suicide, you need to get them in a safe situation. You don't cater to their every need and whim. Giving a child access to puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries is not an appropriate response to a child who's suicidal and suffering from depression.
Yeah, also, I mean, I think it goes along with this idea about believing people with mental illnesses. You shouldn't believe people with mental illnesses because they lie. I myself had a very bad eating disorder for many, many years, and I lied all the time. Oh, mom, yeah, I totally had dinner. Oh, yeah, I'm totally great. And that is what people with mental illnesses do to get their way. And so the fact that her daughter has said, I'm going to kill myself and run away, it's not indicative of her transgender identity. It's indicative of mental illness.
Right. And that's a hallmark of mental illness, that people who are mentally ill
Yeah.
aren't aware oftentimes of the severity of their thinking,
Mhm.
cognitive thinking processes, and how
Mhm.
distorted they've become.
And when I hear this and the daughter says either suicide or running away are the only things she can do, what is running away going to accomplish? Why
Right.
do kids run away from home? They run away from home because their home life is bad.
Mhm.
I have no idea what this woman's home life, what her parenting is like. I am not going to pass any judgment on any parents for what they're doing. But the reason children run away is because they do not feel good at home. Something's happening at home. That's not, running away is not going to fix a trans identity if that's what the real problem is. You
Well-
take yourself with you.
This was before the son even announced the transgender identity. So this is a child who's depressed and talking about running away. As we listen further, we find that she puts him in a support group, and suddenly the child comes home with a trans identity and everything is okay. So let's listen to that.
Two solutions she felt would solve it was either suicide or running away. I'll say that again. She was in such a spot, she felt that suicide or running away were the only options.
Can we pause it
Yeah.
again?
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out that Ms. Newman is doing exactly what trans activists tell kids to do.
Mhm.
Prey upon emotions,
Yep.
manipulate people's emotions.
Yep.
Ms. Newman, Representative Newman, didn't just say once, my son felt he either had to commit suicide or run away. Let me say that again. Why did she need to say that again? To prey upon people's emotions. We got it. We heard you the first time.
Yep. This is all about emotional blackmail.
Not to lose our child, we enrolled in a local day therapy program. One night after her program, my daughter perked up in her chair at the dinner table, excited to share some news. She told us she had figured it out. Mom, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl, and my name is Evie Newman. Everything had clicked at that moment. She had been pretending to be something she wasn't. She wasn't being authentic.
Okay, I just have to, to me, this is horrifying that this is a child who said that they wanted to kill themselves and run away. They put the child in a day program. The child comes home and says, it turns out I'm actually something I'm not. And they're celebrating that as the child suddenly being authentic and not even questioning where this might have come from, where this thought process might have evolved from, or suddenly this child perked up. I mean, none of this makes sense.
And I think she's well aware, Representative Newman is well aware that the sudden change took place at the day group therapy. She knew right when that change happened. Right. And I didn't hear her say, oh, my child had, always throughout his childhood, been interested in feminine things. I don't hear any of that. I hear classic textbook rapid onset gender dysphoria, which we know comes in large part from social contagion.
As well as classic developing the trans identity as a result of underlying issues, which this child is not going to be getting help for now.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I'd just like to mention the aspect of the well-documented scientific aspect of autogynephilia, which develops normally in puberty, and if it does develop in puberty, you know, trying on clothes, getting sexually aroused by it, it can sort of be managed pretty well. It's when it kind of snowballs and gets totally out of control. And these men typically live really bad lives. I mean, they spend if they do get married, they normally spend a ton of money on clothes. They go through these binge purge cycles. And it's very, and they almost always, as Bailey and Blanchard reported, have comorbidities like narcissistic personality disorder, substance abuse problems. So either way you look at it, either way you want to cut it up, she is not doing the best by her son, you know, really not doing the best by him at all.
Well, let's see what else she has to say.
Nothing had clicked at that moment. She had been pretending to be something she wasn't. She wasn't being authentic. And as we all know, it is the hardest thing in the world to pretend every day.
Again, I hate to like parse out things like this, but this is a biological male, and she's saying it's the hardest thing in the world to pretend to be something you're not. Well, Alix, you and I have both suffered from some eating disorders, and I can tell you that when I was in when I was in the depths of it, I was pretending every day to be fine. I was specifically choosing clothes to cover up the fact that I was skeletal. I was, pretending to eat when I wasn't. I think that, part of mental illness, again, is pretending. And for this parent suddenly to embrace this new identity, and as Maria said, there was no history there. This is classic onset of something. And one of the things that we do know is that a lot of mental illnesses start in adolescence. This is pretty typical.
Puberty.
Schizophrenic, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, OCD. People will often trigger these. And so this child is not getting the help that he needs. Instead, he's actually being encouraged right now to be something that he's not.
It was the happiest day of our lives. Our family was whole again. Still, as a mother, I knew the challenges ahead. My daughter would not grow
Sorry,
up.
I have to interject there. How can it be the happiest day of your life when you discover that your child is potentially going to be on cross-sex hormones for life? How is that the happiest day of your life? It can't be. It just cannot.
And if it is, there's something very wrong, and it might be indicative of what Maria
Very wrong. Yes.
Something wrong with this family, not this child. Again, for this to be the happiest day of their life. The child was born. My goodness.
As an example, at 20,
my God,
could be discriminated against merely because of who she was. That was upsetting to me. She could be thrown out of a restaurant. She could be evicted from her apartment. She could be denied access to education and denied health care.
Okay.
No.
Again,
no.
This is completely ridiculous.
Nobody gets denied access to health care because they're transgender. Doctors give health care to people who need it. Now, doctors have not traditionally given pap smears to men. And men are now complaining, like Yaniv, that is horrible oppression not to give me a cervical exam when I don't have a cervix. But that is not withholding health care.
This really reminds me of an email that I received just this week from Dr. Blanchard, which said that he had a patient once that came to him 10 years ago who had drawn up surgical plans, surgical procedure to have, he wanted to have his penis, but he also wanted to have a cavity made. And Blanchard was sort of said, absolutely not, we are not going to help you do this. And he went around the country with his surgical plan that he made himself to go and get this procedure carried out, and nobody would help him. Was he denied health care? I'm sure that's what this I'm sure that's what she's trying to allude to, that this is the type of thing.
And Alix, I don't know about you, but when I was suffering from anorexia, I would have loved to have had liposuction. thought that was perfect. Or a
Yeah.
gastric bypass surgery, they wouldn't give it to me. Why not? Because
Mhm.
it wouldn't have been healthy. And that's
Mhm.
not denial of healthcare. It's not denial of healthcare when a child wants, a medication that's not going to be healthy for them. That's appropriate healthcare. So again,
Mhm.
I'm so frustrated with these accusations that these are, they're lying. This is lying. Children are not being denied educational opportunities. Children are not being denied healthcare because of their trans identity. They're being treated
Mhm.
as actually they are their biological selves, their actual, you could even say authentic self.
Well, and to these kids, I mean, as we've said several times, this poor child is not getting help for any of his real problems.
Yeah.
Because it's all put on this transgender is a panacea for anything. And we've seen that, Joanna Olson Kennedy had a slide in one of her presentations of all the ways that gender dysphoria can present. And it's everything, anything. Oh, if you're feeling a little down, you're transgender. If you're, feeling a little sick to your stomach, you're transgender.
If you don't like having a period. Yeah, I mean, if you don't like puberty, must be transgender. Yeah, it's very disturbing.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
She could be denied access to education and denied health care just because of who she is. On top of that, the likelihood of facing hateful, vile attacks, and she has.
Again, I'm going to just stop it. When a lot of times when these activists talk about hateful, vile attacks, they're talking about being misgendered or somebody using their given name. Typically, that's what they're referring to. And it's, again, very important for people to understand the language of manipulation that's being used here.
Verbal and physical for simply existing and being her authentic self was almost a certainty. Signing the Equality Act into law isn't going to change that reality overnight. It absolutely will not. But it will ensure that Americans like my daughter are afforded the same civil rights already extended to every other American across the nation.
And I want to cut in because what the Equality Act does is it overrides Women and Girls Acts. It freedoms and protections. It overrides freedom of religion. It overrides conscience and belief and speech, and prioritizes, you could say, privileges one group over all these other groups.
Well, and they keep calling it a civil right. And for anybody who isn't aware yet, what the so-called Equality Act is doing is that it's taking sex, biological sex, out and replacing it with gender identity. And what that means is anybody who says, I am a woman, I am a man, gets all the rights and protections afforded people who were born as women or men. This is exceptionally bad for women and children because this is the obliteration of women's sports. There will be no more women's sports because any man, no litmus test, no requirements, any man just says, I'm a woman today, and he gets on the women's team because most men are going to beat out most women in athletics, at all levels. So this is a disaster. The Equality
Act also means any man can say he's a woman and go into women's bathrooms, locker rooms, again, obliterating the privacy rights of ours, obliterating freedom of religion for women whose religious beliefs prohibits them from being undressed in front of men who aren't their
husbands. And you've had that happen to you.
I did.
And it's walk in.
Really uncomfortable.
And he stared at you, you said.
Exactly. Yeah, he did not behave like a woman. He's not a woman.
No woman walks into a restroom, sees another woman in a state of undress and stares at her.
No, they avert their eyes.
No, a woman will always avert her eyes. Out of respect, even though we all have the same parts, we all know what each other look like. We're generally not turned on by each other, but we will avert our eyes out of respect. That was a man. That was a man.
And the other thing that we need to keep in mind is this actually sets up the potential for us to be called criminals because of what we're saying now. I actually was at a hearing where somebody accused those who are proposing legislation to prohibit the medical transitioning of children saying that it's that it fell under hate crime laws, that it was hate speech. And so this sets up the potential for our freedom of speech, for our freedom to protest what is happening here, for our freedom to say, wait a minute, this is not the truth. This is not about authenticity. This is about a whole ideology that's pushing lies and is dangerous to our children, for us to actually get in trouble for that. And that's incredibly concerning. So this is not about equality in any way, shape, or form.
It will ensure that Americans like my daughter are afforded the same civil rights already extended to every other American across the nation.
And again, I hate to keep pausing this, but transgender people already have those rights. They have the same civil rights. Nobody's taking away their rights. So we're just saying that you have to be honest about who you are, but nobody's taking away anybody's rights here, except for the people who are pushing the Equality Act. The other thing that's very problematic here is for, the LGBT community, that they're going to now be forced to, lesbians will be forced to accept a biological male into their communities, because if he says he's a woman, then you have to accept him as a woman, according to this act. It's very problematic.
Yeah. And this really, I think that this kind of goes to the, many people won't know about this, but there was an all-female music festival that was held up until I think 2017, and they started to let males in, a couple of males, whatever, and one of them was really chummy with these two lesbians. And one of the women said, you know what, I don't like this guy hanging around with us anymore. And he killed them. He actually murdered both of the women and their teenage son, Dana Rivers. It's a really tragic story. I'm not suggesting that every man that claims to be a lesbian is going to do things like that. But I'm just saying that, women have women-only spaces because of things like this. And certainly, if somebody wants to hold a lesbian rock festival, they should be able just to say, no, we don't accept certain people, and that's it. If the same thing is, you should be able to say, I'm holding a goth only festival and only goths can come.
I recently saw a meme, and it basically said something like, if there is a man who is trying to enter spaces where women are saying that man is not welcome, that man is a predator. And I think that's really important to say. There are plenty of transgender, trans-identified men who go into the men's bathroom. I know a couple myself, and they're willing to accept that, yes, they look different than most men. Yes, they dress like women, but they are biologically male. They go into the men's bathroom because they know that it would make women uncomfortable for them to go in there. If a man is pushing his way into a space where we are saying, no, you're not welcome, we don't feel safe with you in here, that person is acting as a predator. Even if they don't feel like they're a predator, that's a bullying way of acting that undermines our ability to keep ourselves safe as women.
Well, and one of the arguments is that these trans-identified, these men who say that they're women, they don't feel safe going into the man's bathroom. Well, welcome to our world. We don't feel safe with a man in our bathroom. Why should we not feel safe so that you can feel safe? Why are your rights so much more important than ours are?
They didn't name the problem. That's the thing. When they're talking about all of this, going on, they didn't name the problem. What is the problem? Male violence is the problem, okay? If you're so frightened about male violence on these males, okay, then you create a third space. If male violence is the problem, you do not put them in with the females. It's just
you address the male violence, right?
Exactly.
You address the male violence. You don't put women at risk.
Yeah.
To every other American across the nation. And that's all it's about. It's about equality. We're not asking for anything special or different. Equality.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. You are asking for something special and different.
Imagine I asked any of you on this dais or on the committee today to simply try being someone you absolutely are not. To try being the opposite gender of the way you feel deeply. To try to be something.
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
What's that mean? Like the opposite.
This is buying into all these regressive stereotypes. So for me to pretend like I was the opposite gender, what would that even mean? Would that mean that I cut my hair short and wear plaid? Like,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I've asked, give me a definition of gender that does not rely on stereotypes.
Mhm.
There's not one. There's not one. Explain to me how you know what it feels like to be somebody else. You don't. None of us have ever experienced life in anybody's head or body but our own. I've never experienced life as anybody else. I've never experienced life as Alix. I don't know what it feels like to be Alix.
Well, and
And
this
what is
boy knows what it feels like to, maybe this boy feels like he knows what it feels like to want to be a woman, but he doesn't
Yeah.
know what it feels like to be a woman. I mean, those are two very different things. What the Equality Act does is allows people to just by virtue of saying, this is how I identify, to be accepted as something that they're not. And again, it's
Yeah.
totally, and I could flip back and forth a number of times a day, depending on
Mhm.
you know, when it best met my interests. I could be
Mhm.
male for a little bit and then female and then male again. You know, this is all based on an identity. And what even is an identity? What even is a
Mhm.
gender identity? It's not
Mhm.
quantifiable. It's not measurable. There's no way to verify it in any way.
Mhm.
Well,
Also, I find it very troubling just to say that that she's making a political statement out of what is probably her male child's a very temporary kind of revelation. What, 14 years old? I had a lot of phases at 14. Okay, I was a rocker one week, I was a vegan the other, and I would think it would be, I mean, it's so ludicrous to even consider that you're forming your lifelong identity at the age of 14. And I really don't want it to come across that we're making fun of this child in any way, because they clearly have mental health issues and their mother is using them for what? At the end of the day, the Equality Act means a lot to us, but it doesn't mean more than your child, and exploiting them, I find it very exploitative. I really do.
Well, and it's
I
also
mean,
really
right,
concerning because this child even if this child like realizes this was a huge mistake, there's no way this child now has the opportunity to say whoops, because his
Mhm.
mother is now using him as, you know, some kind of a showpiece in this debate. This child's mental health is being completely overlooked in order to push this agenda.
yeah, yeah, you're right. He'll never be able to say, whoa, whoops, I made a mistake, because she's made this a national issue based on this 14-year-old
International.
child,
God.
international issue based on this 14-year-old child, on emotionally manipulating the rest of the world over this
Mhm.
child. And I was thinking about what you said, Alix, about when you're 14. When I was 14, I had an intense crush on Harrison Ford. Han Solo, Indiana Jones. I
Yeah.
remember lying in bed at night thinking, I have to marry Harrison Ford, or I will die. I will die if I don't
Yeah.
marry him. Seriously thinking I'm gonna die if I don't.
Mhm.
I didn't marry him, and I'm okay. And
Yeah, I used to spend hours and hours writing gifts and cards to Claire Danes from after I saw her in Romeo and Juliet. I sent her a birthday present. Like, I was 12 years old. I just thought that she was the best actress in the world, and just totally, like, we were going to be best friends. And, now I think about it, she must have been really freaked out getting this creepy present from a 12-year-old. But that's what you do. That is what you do when you're a kid. And to think that I would have been like, in my 30s, like, still like, oh, I really hope I can be friends with Claire Danes one day. Like, oh, it's just ridiculous. And this poor child being used in this way.
Not to mention, apparently his parents this was the best day of their life when he came home and told them this. So he's going to be feeling like, if he is suffering from depression, anxiety, and issues, all of a sudden he's hit on what makes his parents happy. And I don't know about you, but I struggled with getting along with my parents. My mother and I had a very strained relationship when I was a teenager, and I felt like I was never, ever good enough. Actually, true with my dad too. I never felt good enough. If I had come home and said something and they suddenly were celebrating it and saying, this is the best day of our lives, you bet your bottom dollar I was going to stick with that, because suddenly my parents accepted me. And that kind of acceptance from parents is profound. So the fact that they reacted in that way is horrifying to me.
It makes me
Mhm.
wonder, what would she say if he did say, you know what, Mom, I'm actually a boy and I'm going to live as a boy.
Would that be the saddest day of their life?
How are you going to respond to that?
Yeah.
You just put him on a path of no return.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, let's listen to the rest of this.
To try to be something that you are not every day is very difficult. Do this for a week, a month, a year, and I guarantee you will feel deep depression, great anxiety,
Suicide.
and yes, even suicide.
Yep, it's always got to be
To
thrown
pass
in there.
this legislation, we can show millions of Americans that their government accepts them and will protect them for who they are.
Again, I'm going to stop this because what this bill will do is tell half of America that we don't accept women. We're not going to protect women. Your rights and protections are going to be overridden by any male who wants to claim to be a female.
Yeah, we do
Yeah.
not speak about women.
Also, I really just, by the way, this child's life will not be improved by the Equality Act, not at all, because they have all of the rights that they need currently. Okay, if it turns out that they are gay, they can marry. If this male wants to, wants to do what is he prevented from doing as a male? The Equality Act will only serve him if he decides to take a place in a women's prison, or run in an all-female shortlist, or become the president of a rape shelter, all manner of things.
Take a scholarship that was intended for women.
Yeah, absolutely. Things which actually help women get out of poverty. Really, it's just utterly ridiculous, destroying women's sports. So the Equality Act is not going to affect this 14-year-old boy cross-dressing.
But it will affect half of the population, all of us who are.
Yeah, definitely.
I encourage all of you to not weaponize religion and not weaponize red herrings about sports.
It's just a red herring, Alix. I'm
not
not sure.
Weaponizing emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
How about not weaponizing your 14-year-old child?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Weaponizing your political platform.
Yeah, and to call this a red herring is just completely untrue, and she knows it. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's trying to gaslight people. She's trying to bully us into accepting this, and she's using emotional blackmail to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't believe her for a minute. I really don't believe her for a second. And every single person who has a trans-identified child who has testified during this, I'm just thinking to myself, you have a young child who has, who from what you've already said has some serious mental health issues. And you're not, could you imagine if 4 years ago, whilst discussing, let's say they were discussing legalizing marijuana, and everybody was to come up and discuss how depressed their teenagers were. It would just be like, well, none of this makes really any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm totally perplexed. I'm just dumbfounded at this stupid Equality Act. It needs to end. It is so stupid.
And it's horrifying to me that this poor child is being, put out there internationally as sort of an example of being transgender, when it's clear to me that this child has some underlying mental health issues that I just have this image of this child who struggled and his parents being so delighted that finally the solution is that he's actually been born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
What kind of family encourages that kind of thought process?
We're
going to celebrate. You've discovered you're inherently flawed, and the only way to fix yourself is to do damage to your otherwise healthy body.
Well, the reason, and I think we already know this, is because they can turn these kids into celebrities. I mean, look at Jazz Jennings and his family, and the way they've celebrated this and turned it into a family business. They have made a family business out of jazz. Most 14-year-olds do not want to be the center of public attention, especially not for something so personal as their sexuality or their gender. I've got 3 kids, and I write a Christmas letter, and I write it about our family, and I make it funny. I run that by them before that even goes out to the 100 people that we know, because there are times they're like, no, don't tell that story. Don't tell that story about me. And I'm going to honor that. I don't think any kid, unless he's being told that this makes you a celebrity, really
Mhm.
wants his sexuality or gender stuff out there in the public like this.
Wow.
That's
Right. And
uncomfortable.
with Jazz Jennings in particular, you know, I really was quite shocked at how that was because they must have done some clever editing and you know to try and portray the best light. And even in the best light, it was I mean, just horrifying. This kid was what was Ken Zucker's stats on gender dysphoric kids? 95%. So you know this kid was so likely to grow up to be a healthy gay person, and instead they were sterilized at 12, put on cross-sex hormones at 14. Have you know, had their penis inverted at 17, which was a disaster. Okay, just imagine 17 years old in genital surgery. And then after that, we see Jazz now 20 years old and it has multiple mental health issues.
Right.
You know, not just one or two, you know, severe mental health issues. And I'm just thinking, like, this is just horrific. And you know that the mother has to wake Jazz up to dilate.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Which is basically, I think she threatened to sexually assault him with the dilator that Jazz's mother did.
we got to do better.
Are out of control. And I don't know for certain, but I just wonder how much funding this congresswoman is getting from Big Pharma, because there must be an ulterior motivation. This makes absolutely no sense,
No.
other than the fact that maybe she's completely out of touch with her son as a mother. That's the only other. So let's see how she wraps this up. Again, I just find this so horrifying.
Cringy.
Weaponize red herrings about sports. And I also encourage you to talk to your faith leaders and your sports directors at all of your colleges, because I have talked to many of them and they encouraged me today and were excited that I was speaking out on this topic about my family. As I said in the beginning, being authentic to yourself and to everyone is the most important thing to do. Truth is real and should be a part of this act, and it is. Thank you.
You know what she just did there? You know what she just did there?
Okay, so
She said, I've talked to faith leaders and they're all on my side.
Right.
She just threw a blanket over
Right.
all religion
Also,
and said they're all on my
they're all
side.
on my side. And then she did this very interesting thing where she said, my son is authentic, pretending to be something he's not, and truth matters, which are those are completely diametrically opposed statements.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I just
cringy.
want to encourage people who have watched this to now go and watch Abigail Schreier's testimony, which is coherent and honest and truthful and full of important information. And the contrast is just profound. Between
and Mary Rice Hassan also. Mary Rice Hassan also testified about the Equality Act. Equally articulate, truthful, honest, appropriate, not emotionally manipulative. I mean, I'm sorry, but this woman who we listened to today, it was full of emotional manipulation. It was full of logical fallacy. It calls into question a lot of things about her ability to govern. And what's
also
really
her
going
ability to represent women, because apparently she's perfectly okay with women being bullied, harassed, and raped, and having their spaces taken away and their opportunities undermined.
And calling the sports issue a red herring, that I mean, I just almost want to cuss when I hear that, because that is not a red herring. That is an important issue that girls have worked their whole lives to excel in sport, are being kicked off the podium by mediocre boys. And everyone says, oh, the poor boys, shouldn't they be able to compete? Well, no, not everybody gets to compete. I don't get to compete in sports. I tried, and I didn't make the team because I'm not good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
If they want to compete against boys, they can. Nobody's preventing them. Yeah, on so many levels. And again, this is another instance where the media has not accurately portrayed this issue, that people don't really understand. I mean, when I first heard of the Equality Act, of course, that sounds great. Who wouldn't want
Yeah.
equality?
Isn't equality great? Woohoo!
Exactly. And they're not understanding, and this happened with the Violence Against Women Act too. They're changing women to gender identity and including that, and undermining rape crisis shelters, women who are in prisons, locker sports, all of these issues are suddenly, women's rights and protections are completely taken away.
I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that you cannot believe what is said. You can't read the title of a bill and think you know what's in it. Calling it the Equality Act, there's nothing truthful about that. And you've got to read what's in it, and you've got to think about, what does this mean? And we're telling you what the Equality Act means. Go read it. If you don't believe us, go read it yourself and see if we're wrong.
Also, I have a really a big message for anybody who listened to that testimony and is in the same position as this representative. If you're at home and you have a 14-year-old or whatever who is expressing some of this concern about their body, then come to Partners for Ethical Care. We have the sane resources to help you. We operate a 24-hour chat line. If you are a parent in crisis and you need somebody to turn to, if you're really concerned because they're teaching some nonsense at your child's school in the sex education or in the diversity program, come to us. We have the resources. And if you feel just, like something is not quite right, you're feeling like you're being gaslit, you are. And again, we don't have the answers for everything, but we have a lot of the answers, okay? If you're frustrated and you feel like you want to start to put, your boots on the ground and actually start to have your voice visible, we can help to coordinate with actual protests that are going to be happening, peaceful protests. So I just want to really communicate that to everybody out there, that come to Partners for Ethical Care if you're having a problem with your child, if you're concerned about women's safety, or if you actually want to come and volunteer with us and protest.
And if you're a child like this 14-year-old who has that deep discomfort with who you are, who hates your body the way it is, first of all, it's not that uncommon. And second of all, harming your body is not the appropriate response. And it just, I feel for this 14-year-old. I was 14 and I had such distaste for my body. I hated it. If somebody had said, you can go ahead and change it and we'll support you in that, I would have jumped at it. But it would have meant that I had been medicalized for life, and who knows what kind of side effects I would have had. It would have completely reinforced the self-hatred that I had. What this does is not healthy. It causes kids to run away from themselves, to bury their emotions, and to not resolve those underlying issues. So please, if you're that kind of a child, we urge you to, reach out to us. We can help, find you some resources. If you're the parent, like you said, Alix, we can help find resources. And I want to reiterate that we have nothing but compassion for this child who we believe is he's being given inappropriate medical and mental health care, and his parents are reinforcing this idea that he's inherently flawed.
Yeah.